right now, top of the hour, let's get right into the President of the United States, who's making his way to Alaska for the high-stakes face-to-face summit with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The two will meet at an American military base in Anchorage. The goal is to end the war in Ukraine. But the president has been lowering expectations, suggesting this meeting is only a starting point to reaching any kind of real peace deal. Moments ago, he spoke on Air Force One, and he doubled down on the potential consequences for Russia if a peace deal is not reached.
Economically severe, yes, it will be very severe. I'm not doing this for my health, okay? I don't need it. I'd like to focus on our country, but I'm doing this to save a lot of lives. Yeah, very severe.
All right, very severe. Residents of Alaska poured into the streets in protest of both Putin and Trump's arrival. Demonstrators waved Ukrainian flags and condemned the leaders for not including Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in today's summit. We have a team of correspondents and reporters standing by with all the details ahead of today's summit and reaction from leaders around the globe. Let us begin first with White House reporter Willie James Inman. He's in Anchorage, Alaska, where he is awaiting the president's arrival. So, Willie James, where do both President Trump and Putin stand going into today's talks?
Hey there, Vlad. Good to be with you this morning from Anchorage, Alaska. Well, for Putin, this is a chance to get in the good graces of President Trump. Remember, their relationship has soured over the past several months as the president has worked to try to get Vladimir Putin to come to the table in terms of bringing about peace for the situation in Ukraine amidst that Russian invasion of that country. And for Trump, it certainly is a high-stakes summit. The president alluding to that in a post on Truth Social, with a post just saying high stakes. It really is a significant moment for this president. This peace process has really bedeviled him since he took office. Of course, we have the situation in the Middle East between Israel and Hamas as well. But the president focusing on the Russia-Ukraine conflict here today in Anchorage once he arrives is going to be able to greet President Putin, to sit down with the president one-on-one. And he talked about a couple of different things that could come up today, including that land swap that he teased earlier. Take a listen to what he said on Air Force One.
They'll be discussed, but I've got to let Ukraine make that decision. And I think they'll make a proper decision. But I'm not here to negotiate for Ukraine. I'm here to get them at a table.
Remember, the president of the United States can't agree to swap or change land for a separate country. That is certainly up to Ukraine. In fact, President Zelensky himself said it's not up to him because the Constitution forbids him to trade away land to another country. We'll have to wait and see in terms of how that process plays out. But the president alluded to this yesterday in the Oval Office, speaking to reporters, saying that the more important meeting would be for Zelensky and Putin to sit down, for the president to be included in that meeting as well. And he also teased that potentially some European leaders could also be involved in that process, Vlad.
All right, so someone might say, Willie James, that the summit is already a win for Vladimir Putin. Why is that?
Yeah, well, look, he's back on the world stage. Putin doesn't travel often, and now he has this face-to-face meeting with President Trump. It is a significant moment for the Russians, who have really been isolated since this invasion of Ukraine, not only with sanctions, but Putin has been isolated from other world leaders, not being able to travel as much because of a warrant from the International Criminal Court out for his arrest, accusing him of war crimes. So this is a significant moment for President Putin. Of course, the Ukrainians want to be involved in this process, wanted to be here, of course, because their nation is at stake here. What's happening in that nation is at stake here. So, of course, this is a significant moment for the Ukrainians. But President Putin and the Russians, this is certainly, some view it as a win for Putin. But we'll have to wait and see in terms of how things play out. The president oftentimes talks about the stakes, but he also mentioned that he could walk away from all of this if he doesn't see that Putin is willing to move towards that peace process, Vlad.
Yeah, the photo opportunity for both world leaders is obviously going to be significant and drive the news cycle. I recall, of course, when President Trump met with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, not much has come, if anything, from that meeting other than driving the news cycle for a week. In this case, there's a lot of lives at risk, as the president indicated on Air Force One. So we'll see what happens. Willie James Inman reporting from Anchorage, Alaska. Thank you. Let's bring in CBS News foreign correspondent Ramy Inocencio from our London newsroom. So Ramy, give us some context as to what would be considered a positive result for European leaders who are very closely watching this summit.
Vlad, yeah, absolutely. I'll say this. If Putin agrees to a ceasefire, then the question is at what cost to Ukraine and or the United States? You got to make a note here. 2 of the 5 ministers joining Putin oversee the country's finances or its investment. So that implies that there will be some kind of economic consideration. Would Trump say that he'll lift oil sanctions, for example? Or would Putin say that he'll invest in America? And then there's the worst case scenario, that they both push Ukraine to give up all of the territory that Moscow has annexed so far and give up all hopes of joining NATO.
Invading Ukraine 3.5 years ago, Russia's President Vladimir Putin thought it would be a lightning victory. Since then, Ukraine's military has killed or wounded nearly 1 million Russian troops, says a Washington-based think tank, while Ukrainian forces have suffered an estimated 400,000 casualties. Russia now controls 1/5 of the country.
How did Russia's invasion change?
We've been on the war's front lines with weary, traumatized soldiers in their trenches and with fresh, masked faces at sniper training in Ukraine's eastern forests. But Russia's military has surged even this week, its soldiers purportedly raising Russian flags in victory. Now, President Donald Trump and Russia's President Vladimir Putin meet to discuss Ukraine's future, but alarmingly, without its president, Volodymyr Zelensky.
You don't have the cards right now.
From Trump's White House, it's been a tense past 6 months, with doubt whether U.S. support would continue. Lifted at times by cautious optimism.
Getting a good outcome for Ukraine is not just a matter of right and wrong.
In Europe, Zelensky found rock-solid unity, the coalition of the willing, led by the UK, with France, Poland, Italy, Finland, NATO, and the European Union. Culminating in this tight embrace this week, Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer's show of solidarity for the world to see. Through this whole time, Ukrainian support for a ceasefire has risen to a majority. Its military and drones still trying to hit back this week against a neighbor that dwarfs it in size and power.
And in just this past hour, Vlad, Ukraine's military said that it sunk a Russian cargo ship carrying drone parts and ammunition from Iran that is on the northern Caspian Sea. That could be a possible sign to Trump that they still have got the fight in them as he meets Putin in these next few hours.
All right, Ramy Inocencio reporting from London. Thank you, Ramy.